as I was walking a little further, I came upon this other spot. Just look at this. Just look at this, how beautiful. Oh my goodness. It's just so nice. I had not been here before, not in this spot, not at this particular spot, you know. And so I just decided to sit here for a little while longer here on this beautiful tree here. Do I see it? Do you see it? Oh yeah, this beautiful tree. And I can just sit there next to the creek on this beautiful tree and do a little bit of more talking with myself, do a little bit more explaining, just enjoying. I'm not explaining anything. I'm just enjoying my embodied language. And this environment, of course, is very conducive to expressing my embodied language. There's nobody else here. There's just these beautiful rocks, these clear water, and I'm just sitting here in the shade, and it's still pretty hot today, even though it is already in October. And I'm just so fortunate to be here, and I'm so glad, you know. I just want to let you know, I studied psychology, and I wanted to become a psychologist, and I was on my way of achieving my PhD. I had done all my coursework, but at the institution where I was, which is Palo Alto University, kind of a prestigious uppity grad school in Palo Alto, which I went to because they had a consortium with what's it called, Stanford University. And at the time I was really enthralled with Dr. Zimbardo, and so I just was hoping to also be in a class with Zimbardo. It never actually happened. But in any case, I was sold on that, and I, back in the days, Bonnie and I, my wife and I, we sold our house and we went to the Bay Area, and that's where I studied for my degree. I got my Master's of Science in Clinical Psychology, and then I went on for my PhD. I was a PhD candidate, started writing on my dissertation. But there was absolutely no support whatsoever for what I'm telling you here. And I just want you to know that. I just want you to, and it's not to blame this particular institution, because I've also taught many years psychology at Butte College. It's the same thing. There is just no appreciation in any institution of education for what I call embodied language. There just isn't. And there's good reason for there to not be any appreciation, because if there would be any serious attention to what this is, it would completely alter our view of psychology. It would completely alter our whole approach to how we deal with people that presumably have psychological problems. Yeah. Embodied language is, you could say, the gift that keeps on giving, but it is also just the truth, the reality of how we as human beings ought to be able to communicate. Yeah, we ought to be able to communicate in such a way that we are not forcing each other, that we're not dominating each other, that we're not putting ourselves above each other, that we're not putting each other down, that we're not shutting each other up. We ought to be able to communicate with each other. We can be like that. We can have embodied language in which we connect with ourselves as well as with each other, and in which we allow each other to connect with ourselves and to stay connected with ourselves. And so in mainstream psychology, there is no reference anywhere. Yeah, they talk about it, but they never really get into it. They never get into the actual experience. They never really get into listening to themselves while they speak. And I keep repeating this because unless we talk out loud and hear our own sound like I do right now, there's no way in which anyone can embody their language. The speaker is the listener, and there's no separation between the speaker and the listener. And if you are listening to me as the speaker, you can only hear me if you're one with me. And if you're one with me, then you know that you are simultaneously also, just like me, the speaker and the listener. And there is, of course, no such thing as a speaker inside of me or a listener inside of me. And so there's just speaking and listening, which happens simultaneously. And this is not just some sort of word game. This is the truth of our human interaction. Spoken interaction, which has completely been, you could say, eroded by the fact that we have become so used to written language, which presumably is more important than spoken language. Well, no, it's not. In our relationships, in our families, in our collaboration with others, or our, hopefully good relations with each other, we are still talking with each other, and it is going to be the way in which we talk which is going to set the stage for how we're going to deal with each other and with ourselves. And so our language is determining all of our other behaviors. And obviously when we engage repeatedly, unknowingly in disembodied language, in which we don't listen to ourselves, and in which listening to other people becomes more important than listening to ourselves, then we are confused. If we do not listen to ourselves, we are confused. We get carried away by listening to others. And we put authority outside of ourselves. We believe that others know better for us what is good than we ourselves do. But we, in embodied language, we are our own authority. And it is very clear that in embodied language, we are listening to ourselves, and we feel the need to no longer listen to others who have disembodied language, for the most part. Yeah? I mean, if you listen to me right now, you can hear that I have embodied language, and you can hear how different that is from the disembodied language that you are used to. Someone like me who has embodied language does not enforce anything on anybody. I do not dominate you, I do not manipulate you, I do not exploit you, because I do not do this to myself either. But if you have someone sitting here who's having disembodied language, you hear somebody who's pontificating about some, supposedly important knowledge that you all ought to know about, and you yourself are not important, that knowledge is more important than you, well, that is what disembodied language espouses. And we have been carried away by this again and again and again. And it's about time that human beings begin to wake up to the fact that there is such a thing as our embodied language, which we can only get to if we hear ourselves, if we speak with ourselves, if we sit with ourselves and also decide that listening to ourselves is more important than listening to someone else. Because we ourselves have things to say to ourselves which we haven't been able to say to other people because they just wouldn't allow us. In our disembodied language, we cannot say the things that we can say to ourselves with embodied language. So, yeah, I just know this to be true, and I want you to know it as well. And if you begin to, for yourself, explore this and experiment with this, you will find that it is so. All right, I'm gonna take you with me again on my walk back to my car. Thank you for being with me here in this beautiful place and for listening to me. And I look forward, of course, always to talking with you about this, because unless we talk about this, it is never going to become clear. So just please get your courage, talk with me, contact me, start talking with me about this, and then of course I will instruct you to listen to yourself. Of course I will, you could say, let you know, like, okay, this is what you do when you engage in disembodied language. Yeah, of course I will point that out to you, because I hear the difference and you can hear the difference too. And once you learn to discern between your own embodied language and your disembodied language, you will know for sure that you want this embodied language. You know it, you feel it, you want it. It's not because I say so, because you say so, because you let yourself know that you need to stop your disembodied language. You need to step away from your conditioning history. And by doing that, you will be able to have this. It's wonderful. You can do it. Just get in touch with me, or get in touch with my friend Annemiek in the Netherlands. She knows about it just as much as I do. Yeah. And this is not anything that you can learn in a seminar. You cannot learn it in a workshop. You cannot learn it in a session. This is not about that. This is not about sessions. This is not about some theory. This is about how we either are going to talk with each other or not. And of course, you have already had moments of this, but you never were able to continue with it, because it was never clear that your embodied language is what you wanted. As a matter of fact, you were afraid of your own embodied language always. You were punished for your embodied language. You were believing that embodied language is wrong. Well, it is not. It is good. It is wonderful. Yeah? And your disembodied language, that's a big problem. And that problem can be overcome. That problem can be stopped if you just begin to talk out loud with yourself. And then once you talk with me or with anybody else who has embodied language, you will realize that your ability to talk with other people is based on the way in which you talk with yourself. And when you talk with others in exactly the same way as you talk with yourself, you will have embodied language together. And it's such a celebration. It's so great, because Annemiek and I, we both enjoy having embodied language with each other, because we just celebrate our language enlightenment together, and we have come into our language enlightenment together. And everybody who shares their embodied language with each other will come together in their language enlightenment. And we will say the wisest things. We will say the solutions to our problems. We will say how we can live peaceful, happy, satisfied lives, full of energy, full of care, full of love, full of respect, full of consciousness. Yeah. And what is that consciousness? Consciousness is just the extent to which we are able to express our own experience accurately. Yeah? So the extent to which our language doesn't take us away from our experience, but actually allows us to have our own individual experience.